you're ready to earn an extra $200 to $3,000 per day in passive income, just like the Run Guys do every single day, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, then click the link in the description of this video to learn the Run Guys' #1 way to start earning passive income online with crypto today.
I've seen what the Chinese are doing all over Africa. I cannot believe they have whole compounds, of Chinese people. I was in Cameroon, and they have these huge trenching machines dropping fiber optic cable all the way across Africa. And what are we doing? Nothing. We have Kamala Harris not even going to the frickin' border, and she's the border czar. I mean, oh my God. And then when Andy talked about how when they abandoned Afghanistan, you forget that I was there in Vietnam when they abandoned us in 1975. And I still remember, I'm walking through the village. This is before we declared we quit, before we quit Vietnam. I was watching the Vietnamese scurrying around. I said, and they were buying gold leaf. That gold leaf they rub on stuff? They were buying gold leaf like crazy. I'm going, and Americans, as I write about, we don't know what gold is because it was illegal for us to own gold. So I'm watching these Vietnamese buy all this gold leaf. And I asked my staff sergeant, his name was Jackson, he was one of the smartest guys I met. I say, Jack, why are they buying gold? He says, they're going to run. They know Americans abandoned us. They're going to run. They're going to get out of this country as fast as they can. And during my era, that was the Vietnamese boat people and all that. They were climbing on. They were ready to get out of that country. And then one of the more famous pictures is the picture of a CIA Air America helicopter on top of the U.S. Embassy. And all these Vietnamese people are running up there, and they're punching them, trying to keep them out of there. And then they have us on our aircraft carriers, and we're dumping our helicopters over the side because they got too many of the Vietnamese helicopters running. They were flying to our carriers. And I was out there watching all this stuff going, holy mackerel. And then in 74, that's when the ERISA came out, the 401k, and going, what the heck is going on?
A lot of these pieces, I think, have been in play for a very long time, evidently. And even when you talk about some of the things that you saw in the past, you can add them to a progression of events where, they take a long time to play out. But I do think as we see what's happening here in 2022, it is speeding up. As the world reserve currency, you guys, it's not our job to say who can and can't use it. And that's the biggest mistake you can possibly make. And as the world reserve currency, if you weaponize it the way we did against Russia, you are asking for trouble. In the last 3 years, more money has been created in the last 3 years than in the entire history of the country before. The majority of that money that has been created, or a good portion of it, went into assets where hedge funds can borrow $1 billion at 1%, plow it into equities, plow it into real estate, plow it into cryptocurrencies, make a fortune, pay off the loan with no problem at all, make huge bonuses. And what we've seen over the last 3 years is a massive distortion in asset prices. You could call this the crack-up boom in Austrian economics, where massive expansion in credit and lower interest rates create distortions and misallocations of capital and resources where price discovery is next to impossible. Houses are doubling or tripling in a year. Equity portfolios the same. Cryptocurrencies up 10 times. You've been in finance longer than I have, and that's not how markets work. They don't go parabolic like this. And I think a lot of it has to do with the distortions and the misallocations that were created through massive money printing. So I think Fed Chairman Powell has no intention of blowing up the system and getting tough on inflation.
Tightening monetary conditions to ordinary people means the cost of your mortgage has gone up at the fastest pace in history. Over a 1-year period, mortgage rates have never risen this fast. So any money you borrowed has suddenly got much more expensive. Your wages haven't kept up with the cost of just basic services like food. So you're actually feeling poorer. So you can't consume as much, and you start not consuming other things. People overextended on housing because they rushed into housing in 2020 and 2021, and the rates have gone up for them. Also, just the rise in things like the cost of oil has meant that gas prices, all of this stuff, and then the rise in the dollar, which is a monetary tightening. All of these things get together would suggest, and I put them on a chart, it suggests that the ISM is going back to 30, which is as it was in 1974, which is a terrifying fall. Now, it's suggesting that if we're not careful, we could have a very sharp, nasty recession, meaning kind of a negative 5% GDP recession. It might be short, depending what the Fed does. So we've got the setup that we've seen many times in the past. We've got the forward-looking indicators, this monetary tightening, suggesting we've got some real pain to come.
The National Bureau of Economic Research came out with a report not too long ago and said that the 9.1% inflation that was listed in July of this year would have been 16.5% if calculated it the way that they used to in 1980. Like you said, John Williams of Shadow Stats, a legend in this industry, all he does is show the numbers the way that the Fed and the Bureau of Labor Statistics used to calculate numbers. But even if we believe the 9%, by the way, that CPI excludes food, energy, and housing, right? So they pulled out the things that we need that are inflating to give us this now 8.5%. So he says he's getting tough on inflation and raising it to 2.25%, maybe to 3.25% at the next meeting. What good does that do against 8.5% inflation, which we know is probably closer to 17%? What getting tough on inflation is what Paul Volcker did under the same situation, only when they calculated inflation truthfully. Inflation at 16 or 17%, what did he do? He raised the federal funds rate to 19.75%, blew up the economy and blew up inflation. Powell, on the other hand, he raised it to 2.25% with 9% inflation. That's a negative 7% plus real return. Negative. That's not getting tough on inflation.
People are still thinking inflation goes on forever. It did not, and it did not in the 1940s either. 1984, we saw an issue where global trade, there was a huge amount of trade disputes. The dollar was pretty strong, like it is now. Interest rates were going up, and inflation was high. And everybody was fearing, looking back and saying, oh, we don't want the early 80s, late 70s again, the inflation. So Volcker was tightening rates too much, and the economy collapsed. It didn't go to recession because the Fed quickly started cutting rates, but the dollar went up a lot more and created a lot more problems. We ended up with the Plaza Accord in 1985, when everybody had to stop the dollar going up from destroying the global economy. So then the next time we see something similar was 2008. 2008, if you remember, the oil price was at $147. Inflation was 6%. The Fed had been cutting into that because the economy was imploding. 2018, exactly the same. Oil prices high, inflation high, the Fed were hiking rates, trying to tighten the balance sheet, and what happened is the economy rolled over really quickly again. Okay, so what's going on here? Why does this phenomena keep happening? Everyone extrapolates inflation out forever,